They locked me out of my father's funeral as if grief required a guest list. I am Clara Reynolds, the invisible sister in a family built for the camera, edited out of smiles and holiday dinners. When they shut those chapel doors, they thought I'd vanish quietly. They never knew about the USB my father hid, the one that could burn through every frame of our staged perfection. What they stole was not just money, it was the truth about who we were. They barred me from goodbye, but I will be the one to write the ending. The studio lights always made the living room feel warmer than it was, a constant summer glow even in December. They called it the Reynolds shine when the comments rolled in on TikTok, praising our family for being goals. My mother, immaculate in her pastel sweaters, would tilt her head toward Mason, my younger brother, as if she were a stage light designed only for him. I was there too sometimes, usually in the corner, holding a prop mug or arranging flowers. The comments rarely noticed me. When they did, it was always in passing. Oh, the sister's cute too, like I was a decorative plant someone forgot to water. I was 33, and for as long as I could remember, I'd been told I had a nice, supporting presence. Mason had the leading man energy, the brand deals, the smile that pulled likes by the thousand. Reynolds & Co. was technically all of us, but in practice it was Mason and Mom. Dad floated in occasionally, usually for the wholesome father-son bonding videos that got reposted on family channels. My role was background, the reliable laugh, the person who handed Mason his jacket on camera, the quiet anchor that kept the illusion upright. The golden frame in our studio held a photo taken for our 1 million follower milestone. We were all arranged like a magazine spread. Mason in the centre, Mom's hand on his shoulder, Dad to his right, me at the edge, slightly turned inward. The lighting was perfect, but if you looked closely, the far corner of the frame was in shadow. I used to tell myself the darkness was just an accident. The first real crack came during a Q&A live stream. A fan asked if I would be getting my own segment on the channel. Mum laughed lightly, the way she did when she wanted to soften a blow. Clara's just not as into the whole social media thing, she said, her tone breezy. She's our behind-the-scenes girl. Mason grinned. She likes it that way. I smiled for the camera, but inside something shifted. I had filmed an entire series idea 2 weeks earlier, DIY home makeovers that Mason had praised, only for it never to air. I asked about it later and Mum brushed it off. The edits didn't fit the vibe. Besides, Mason's travel vlog is performing better. I told her it felt unfair. She tilted her head, a smile still on her lips. Honey, you're being too sensitive. This is all for fun. Don't take it so seriously. That was the family line. It was all just fun, so nothing could be wrong. Mason's world grew larger, solo sponsorships, interviews without me. At dinner, Dad would ask him about his latest deal while I cleared plates. Once, Mason landed a beverage brand contract worth more than my annual salary. They filmed the celebration, champagne flutes clinking, confetti on the floor. I was there holding the camera. One evening, we were shooting a family game night video. Between takes, Mason left his phone unlocked on the coffee table. I reached for my water bottle and the screen lit up. An open chat app flashed briefly before minimizing. Then I saw it. A folder on his home screen labelled Legal Dad's Will with a tiny padlock icon. My stomach tightened. Dad was in good health as far as I knew, though he'd been more tired lately. I told myself not to read into it. Maybe it was about taxes. Maybe it was nothing. But later that night, I opened my phone to find a message from an unknown number. No profile picture, no name, just 6 words. They're only keeping you until... The sentence stopped there. No punctuation, no sender details. My hands went cold. I reread it until the words blurred. The light from my screen cast a pale glow on the golden frame across the room. From where I sat, the shadow in its corner looked darker than before. The first thing I noticed was the email from our channel manager. We've updated account permissions for security. My login didn't work anymore. I asked Mason about it and he shrugged. We just want to make sure nothing gets hacked. 2 days later, the password to the shared crypto wallet bounced back as incorrect. Mum told me Dad had decided to streamline things, that Mason would handle the finances from now on. It's simpler this way, she said, smiling like she'd just gifted me free time. That same week, a new family vlog went up. In one scene, I was sitting on the couch, scrolling my phone while Mason unpacked groceries. What the video didn't show was that I'd just finished unloading 3 bags of produce before the camera rolled. In the comments, people called me lazy, a freeloader, a mooch. Within hours, someone had looped the clip into a meme, when your sibling lives rent-free. I watched my own face become a punchline. I texted Mom, asking why they'd cut the earlier footage. No reply. A few hours later, I saw our group chat light up with new messages, then go quiet. When I scrolled back, there were gaps in the thread, deleted messages. A grey note replaced them. This message has been deleted. Whatever was there was gone, but the absence felt heavier than words. I was still staring at that gap when an audio file appeared in my email. No subject, no sender. I clicked it, and Dad's voice filled my apartment. Faint, but steady. Clara needs to know this before it's too late. The recording cut off abruptly, leaving only static. I replayed it 3 times, my chest tightening each time. Over the next few weeks, my role in the family brand disintegrated. If views dipped, it was because I wasn't engaging enough on camera. If sponsorship offers stalled, Mum would sigh. Brands want energy, Clara. You can't just sit there. It didn't matter if I'd been edited down to a single awkward shot. Somehow, it was always my fault. Mason leaned into the alliance with Mom. They brainstormed content together, whispered between takes. Dad sat on the couch, scrolling his phone, distant in a way that made me wonder if he was even hearing us. I tried to catch him alone, but Mason or Mom was always there, answering for him. Then came the deep fake. A clip surfaced on a gossip forum, grainy, poorly lit, showing me in Dad's office kawaii, pocketing a hardware wallet and whispering, "No one will ever know." My face, my voice, my hands, all stolen from other videos, stitched into a lie. The thread exploded with outrage. How could she steal from her own father? Mason deserves everything now. But the internet is never unanimous. Buried in the comments, one user pointed out a detail no one else had noticed. A silver bracelet on the wrist in the video. It was the one Dad had given Mason for his 21st birthday, engraved on the inside. My stomach dropped. It wasn't proof, not yet, but it was something. I confronted Mason. He laughed, leaning back in his chair. "You really think I'd waste time making fake videos of you?" "Come on. Mum told me not to fuel drama. Dad said nothing, eyes fixed on the floor. That night, as I sat in the dark, my phone buzzed. A direct message from another anonymous account. They're about to do the same thing with the will. I stared at the words, my mind racing back to that locked folder on Mason's phone. The one I told myself didn't matter. Now I knew better. Dad's death came like a bad edit. One moment he was there, the next he'd been cut from the frame. Mason called me late on a Thursday night, his voice too even. "He's gone, Clara. No warning, no lead up, just the fact dropped between us like a brick." The funeral was set for Saturday, and the Family Channel announced there would be a live stream for fans to celebrate Dad's legacy. When I arrived at the church, the doors were closed. A security guard I'd never seen before stood blocking the entrance. "Private service," he said, avoiding my eyes. "Family only." I told him I was family, that I was his daughter, but he just repeated the words like a script. Behind him, through a narrow crack, I caught a glimpse of the altar, the flowers, Mason at the pulpit. My phone buzzed, a push notification from the channel. "Funeral for Robert Reynolds, now live." I stood outside as strangers in the comments section sent heart emojis, shared favourite clips of Dad teaching Mason to change a tyre or grill steaks. The camera panned to the front row, Mom in black, dabbing her eyes, Mason's arm around her. No empty seat for me. No mention of me at all. Then came the reveal, dropped into the eulogy like a casual blessing. Mum announced that Dad's final wishes had been to leave the entire digital estate, every NFT, every crypto wallet, to Mason, the son, who would carry on his vision. She spoke with the same practiced smile she used for sponsorship intros. Somewhere in the live chat, a username blinked into view, a will watcher. The comment was short, "That date is wrong." Others scrolled past it, but my eyes locked onto the words. The date Mom read for the signing of the will didn't match the timeline of Dad's illness, at least not the one I remembered. Dad had been in the hospital that day, hooked up to machines, barely speaking. After the service, I went home to my apartment, the live stream still looping in my head. Hours later, my email pinged. No subject, no sender, just a file attachment. I hesitated before opening it, then double-clicked. The screen filled with raw, unedited footage. Mason and Mum sat at the dining table, papers spread out between them. Mum's voice was calm, instructive. "You say this part slowly, like you're remembering it." Mason repeated the line about Dad's clarity and intent, tripping over the date. Mum corrected him and they started again. My hands trembled. I slammed my laptop shut. The golden frame on my shelf tipped as if jarred by the movement, falling face down onto the hardwood. The glass cracked. I picked it up and stared, my own image cropped at the shoulder, as if I were leaning out of the picture. For days, I did nothing but delete. Old family photos from my phone, messages from Mom, videos I'd been tagged in. I left the family group chat without a word. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that empty seat in the church and Mason's steady arm around Mom. I replayed Dad's voice from the earlier anonymous recording. Clara needs to know this before it's too late, and wondered if I'd already missed the moment. Self-blame became a loop I couldn't mute. Maybe I hadn't tried hard enough to be part of the channel. Maybe I'd been too quiet, too willing to fade into the background. Maybe this was the consequence of letting them write the script. Nights stretched long. I'd find myself staring at the broken frame on the coffee table, tracing the jagged line in the glass. The fracture split my face from theirs, a literal divide that felt truer than any photo we'd ever posted. The rest of the apartment seemed staged, props for a life no one believed in. It was close to midnight when my phone rang. The name on the screen stopped my breath. Aunt Ruth. She was Dad's older sister, the only one in the family who'd ever told me the truth without dressing it up. Her voice was urgent, almost a whisper. "Clara, listen to me. There's a USB drive your father kept. They don't know about it." I sat up, my heart pounding. What's on it?" "I don't know exactly," she said, but he told me it was for you, and that if things went wrong, it would explain everything." Her words hung in the dark like a lifeline. For the first time in weeks, I felt something spark in my chest. Not hope, exactly, but a pull toward the next step. Aunt Ruth arrived 2 days later with a manila envelope tucked under her arm. Inside was a small black USB drive, the kind Dad used to keep tax records. "He told me to give it to you in person," she said, setting it gently on the table as if it might break. My hands shook, plugging it into my laptop. There was only one file, a video, time-stamped 6 months ago. Dad sat in his office, his hair thinner, his voice slower but steady. "Clara," he began, looking directly into the camera, "I want you to know my will divides everything equally between you and Mason. I've also set aside a scholarship fund for nursing students at the community hospital. Your idea." He paused, glancing down at a folder on the desk. "If anything happens, remember this. They may try to have me sign something when I'm not myself. Don't let them." The words hit harder than I expected. It wasn't just confirmation, it was a warning. He knew. He'd seen the storm coming and left me a map. That night, I fell into a research rabbit hole. I read about probate law, digital asset inheritance, intellectual property rights. I learned that deepfakes could be grounds for defamation suits, that altering or forging a will under certain conditions was a felony. The more I read, and the more the numbness cracked, replaced by something sharper, rage. A week later, a journalist from a tech investigation site reached out. She'd been following the family channel for months, ever since the deep fake clip started circulating. "Did you know Mason sold an NFT property last week?" she asked. "It's still in your father's name on the ledger." The absurdity of it almost made me laugh. Mason had been so eager to cash in that he hadn't bothered to update the records. It was the first real public crack in their facade. I called Aunt Ruth that night. "If we're going to do this, I can't do it alone." She put me in touch with one of her former students, a blockchain engineer, who confirmed he could pull the transaction history from the public ledger. From there, the team grew, a probate lawyer who specialised in contested wills, 2 former fans of the channel who had saved early, unedited videos, and the journalist who'd started connecting the dots. We began collecting evidence. I dug through old hard drives for raw footage, pulling up a version of the deepfake scene before it had been doctored. The lighting, the sound, even the bracelet on the thief's wrist were different. The blockchain engineer mapped every crypto wallet transfer from the months before Dad's death. Tracing coins moved in and out like a breadcrumb trail. The journalist secured a copy of the property NFT sale contract with Mason's signature and the still active registration in Dad's name. We met, twice a week in a borrowed office above a cafe. The plan was ambitious. Release everything during the 5-year anniversary livestream of Reynolds & Co. When their audience would be at its largest, the lawyer called it a surgical strike. Maximum visibility, maximum accountability. One evening, while reviewing a scanned copy of Dad's older will, I noticed a clause buried near the end. If any beneficiary is found to have engaged in fraudulent activity to influence the terms of this will, they shall forfeit their inheritance. My heart pounded as I read it again. This wasn't just a moral victory waiting to happen, it was legal dynamite. I closed my laptop slowly, the weight of that sentence settling over me. For the first time, the balance of power felt like it was shifting. The 5-year anniversary live stream of Reynolds & Co. opened with the familiar jingle, the same polished intro that had once felt like a warm blanket and now felt like a mask. Mason and Mom sat on the couch, framed by soft lighting and strategically placed family photos. We're so happy to celebrate this milestone with all of you, Mason said, flashing the camera his practiced grin. Mum leaned in, resting her hand on his knee, her smile bright and unwavering. They moved through the script effortlessly. Thank yous to fans, montages of their best moments, clips of Dad smiling and laughing beside Mason. It was the image they had perfected. The loving son, the proud mother, the family united in grief but moving forward. At the 15-minute mark, the screen flickered. For a split second, Mason's smile froze mid-frame before the feed cut to black. Then my video began to play. The first image was the raw footage from the deepfake scene, side by side with the doctored version that had gone viral. On the left, the actual clip, Mason in Dad's office, the silver bracelet visible on his wrist as he rifled through the desk. On the right, the manipulated footage replacing his face with mine. Text overlaid across the screen read, "Fabricated evidence." Next came the USB video of Dad speaking directly to me, confirming the will's equal split, the scholarship fund, and his warning about being coerced into signing documents under medication. His voice was calm, but unmistakably clear. The blockchain engineer's graphics followed, mapping every crypto transaction from the months before Dad's death. Red lines showed the movement of funds from Dad's wallet into one controlled by Mason, sometimes minutes after large donations from fans. The journalists segment came next. A scanned contract proving Mason had sold the family's $1 million NFT property while still registered in Dad's name. I'd saved the best for last. The final slide showed the current market value of that NFT, less than 10% of its original sale price. The audience could see it for themselves. The empire Mason bragged about had been cashed out in a hurry. The money already moved elsewhere. The chat exploded. Emojis of shock, strings of question marks, accusations, betrayals typed in all caps. I could imagine the expressions on their faces in the studio, though the feed didn't cut back to them. My phone buzzed, an email from Travis, my lawyer. We just won the temporary restraining order on the probate. They can't touch the estate until the investigation is over. The live stream ended abruptly after that. The replay disappeared from the channel within minutes, but by then it had been downloaded, clipped, and shared across multiple platforms. The collapse was immediate. Sponsors announced one by one they were severing ties with Reynolds & Co. Some cited misalignment of values. Others simply said contract terminated. Their subscriber count bled thousands of followers each hour. Former fans flooded comment sections with archived clips, dissecting every smile, every edit, every moment that now seems sinister in hindsight. Mason broke first. He went live on his personal account, his eyes red, voice trembling. He called the situation a misunderstanding and blamed bad advice for the NFT sale. Mum didn't appear beside him. Instead, she uploaded a statement to the family's Instagram, insisting they'd been misled by a trusted media consultant. Then came Twist 5. The company that had managed their brand for the past 3 years released its own statement. It had ended its relationship with the family months earlier after discovering that Mom herself had directed the creation of the deepfake video, claiming it would drive engagement during a slow quarter. Internal emails surfaced showing her requesting maximum emotional impact and suggesting that framing me as the wayward daughter would bring in more views. The revelation hit harder than I'd expected. It wasn't just Mason's ambition. It had been Mum's strategy all along, calculated and executed like a campaign. 2 days later, I woke to another email from Travis. Attached was a scanned court document, a summons. The probate case had escalated into a formal suit alleging undue influence over a vulnerable testator. The named defendants were Mason Reynolds and Margaret Reynolds. The court date was set. The message from Travis was brief: it's starting. The courtroom was colder than I expected, not in temperature, but in tone. Weeks of hearings, filings, and evidence had built to this day. I sat beside Travis at the plaintiff's table, the weight of my father's voice from the USB clip still lingering in my mind. Across the aisle, Mason looked smaller in his suit, shoulders slouched, his eyes fixed on the table in front of him. Mom wore a muted grey dress, her expression unreadable, like she was waiting for a cue that never came. The judge read the verdict, with the same measured cadence she had used for every ruling, but the words seemed to echo louder. The newer will was voided. The older document was reinstated in full. Half the estate to me, half to Mason, with the scholarship fund for nursing students established exactly as Dad had outlined. The court acknowledged credible evidence of undue influence and ordered a separate inquiry into the creation of the deepfake video. It should have felt like victory, and in many ways it did. But there was no cheer, no applause, just the quiet acknowledgement of a truth that had been there all along, waiting to be recognised. In the days after the ruling, the public's attention turned from the family drama to the larger conversation it had ignited. Commentators debated the ethics of family content. Influencers posted think pieces about exploitation and authenticity, and more than a few former family vloggers quietly deleted entire back catalogues. Sponsors announced new guidelines requiring proof of consent from all family members before campaigns could proceed. Then came a letter. No return address, but the handwriting was familiar, slanted, deliberate. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper, the ink slightly faded. "Clara," it began, "if you're reading this, it means the worst has happened. I want you to remember that you were never invisible to me. Even when the camera didn't see you, I did. I hope you use whatever you inherit, not just to live, but to live free. I'm proud of you already. It was signed simply, Dad." I read it 3 times before folding it back into the envelope. It felt like a closing bracket to the USB video, the final piece of his voice he had left for me. In the weeks that followed, Mason disappeared from social media entirely. Then, through a mutual acquaintance, I learned he had started seeing a therapist who specialised in family dynamics and media pressure. A month later, an anonymous transfer appeared in my bank account. Nothing massive, but enough to signal intent. There was no note, but I didn't need one. It was his way of acknowledging the damage and trying, in his own quiet way, to mend part of it. I decided not to return it. My own life shifted in ways I hadn't anticipated. I no longer wanted to be part of a narrative I didn't control, but I wasn't ready to disappear either. So I started a new channel, just me, no scripts, no staged perfection. I talked about digital safety, about recognizing manipulation in media, about protecting personal images from exploitation. I shared resources, brought on experts, and kept my comment sections open but moderated. The audience was smaller than Reynolds & Co. had ever been, but it was mine. Aunt Ruth became a regular presence in my videos, offering her perspective as someone who had watched the family's arc from the sidelines. I collaborated with independent creators who valued authenticity over reach. People who understood that an audience's trust was worth more than any sponsorship deal. One afternoon, while rearranging my apartment, I found the broken golden frame from before. I replaced it with a new one, a candid shot Aunt Ruth had taken at a small picnic weeks after the trial. In it, I'm laughing, my hair windblown, the sunlight warm on my face. No softbox lights, no colour correction. Just the moment as it was. Sometimes I catch myself looking at that frame when I'm filming, remembering how the first one had been all shadow and staging. This one didn't need any of that. Months later, during a live stream Q&A, a viewer asked the question I had been circling around for years without realising it. If you could go back, would you still have stayed in the family channel? I didn't answer right away. I thought of the years I'd spent just outside the spotlight, of Dad's letter, of the cost of exposure, and the strange intimacy of strangers knowing your name. I thought of the people who had reached out since the trial, thanking me for giving them the courage to set their own boundaries. When I finally looked into the camera, I let the silence hold for a beat longer. Then I asked, what would you do if your own family turned you into content? The chat flooded with answers, some angry, some sad, some hopeful. And for the first time, it felt like the conversation was happening on my terms. The golden frame stayed in the background, steady and unfiltered, a reminder and a promise.